Okay, you're good to go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I have exactly 7 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. I now call to order the 2063rd meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Will the clerk please take roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Bobbitt is absent this evening. Requested excuse. Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Nyhagen requested be excused, as did Councilmember Selby. Councilmember Sherman
Present.
and Councilmember Trope.
Present.
That means we do have a quorum. We also have Mayor Hernandez, City Attorney Colwell, City Administrator Rizzatello, is our Finance Director. I don't see him yet. He will be joining us. Public Works Director Paul Hartwig, Police Chief Troy Tamaris, Fire Chief David Winter, Community Development Director John Rickard. I don't see HR Manager. I think she is busy working on other things. Myself and Deputy Clerk Holm and Greg Dorn is with us today as well. He'll be presenting.
Great. Okay, thank you. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Carolyn needs to unmute herself.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Forgot that.
Okay, thank you. So now's the time that we're going to have a moment of silence. Please keep your thoughts on the rising COVID numbers as well as the political situation in our country. All right, thank you very much. Okay, it is now time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment or arrange to speak?
They did not.
Okay. So then we're going to move on to consent agenda, which consists of approving the agenda for today, November 10th, 2017, 2020. I'm way far back. Approve the council minutes from October 27th, 2020's meeting. And that's it. It was a short consent agenda. Are there any items that the council would like to have removed from the consent agenda?
Also, we're excusing the council members,
Yes.
Selby and Nyhagen.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second Councilmember Cleveland.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. So tonight we have two presentations. First is the dedication of well number 4 in honor of Robert Gordon and the EPA award for that project.
Thank you, Mayor. So you'll see a video here of the dedication of the well for Robert. And also I just want to know, because it's tangentially related, we received a Waters Award for it being an innovative project from the federal EPA. So they recognized it because it was very innovative.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'd like to welcome everybody here for the dedication of the Robert Gordon Well number 4. Robert was instrumental in this project, but just like to share a little bit of history. I remember being called into the previous city administrator's office, I don't know how many years ago, and that was Pat Ray, and he said, "What do you know about Robert Gordon?" And he said, I said, great guy. And he said, well, you know, he's available. And I was thinking about hiring him. I said, do it now. And I said, he's great. You won't be sorry. And Robert was a key instrument in this project, as well as the other ones that are still ongoing. I have to say that I miss Robert a lot. I enjoyed our talks. We'd sit down and we'd talk about our faith. We'd talk about our families, and we'd pray for one another. And I really missed that time and Robert. And I just feel just privileged that I've been able to know Robert. And I think it's appropriate that this facility is named in his honor.
Hey, I'm Mike Telos, City Administrator, and very appropriate name is Robert Gordon Well. Really miss talking with him about various infrastructure projects and life in general. He was a key part of our city staff, and we really miss him dearly. One of the things that we have is a card from city staff with a memento of this plaque, so please accept that. So this is our newest well, and I think like 50 years, so now in perpetuity, it'll now be the Robert Gordon Well, which he worked on the entire 4 years I was here. It's hard to believe it's here, but now it's a Robert Gordon Well. So
That's it.
okay.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And I also want to thank the staff for the idea of naming it after our friend Robert Gordon. Appreciated you bringing that up and for doing it. So thank you to the staff. I'm sure it means a lot to the family, and it also recognizes his contributions to this city. So next we're going to have Greg Dorn, who will present on the proposed Unified Development Code and zoning amendments.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. You may recall that it was 2 years ago about this time that you adopted an updated version of the city's comprehensive plan, which was a significant milestone. And it was last year about this time that you adopted a consolidated unified development code in which several different titles of the city's code that governs development regulations were combined and integrated into a single code, and it was streamlined and made more user-friendly. Since that time, John and I have had the opportunity to work with the Planning Commission on a number of amendments and kind of housekeeping measures, and I'll describe those briefly tonight. As we were doing that, we also addressed some changes to two of the important city planning maps, the future land use map and the city's official zoning map. And so I'd like to take a minute and describe the changes, starting with the two maps and then finishing by highlighting the changes that we are proposing to the development regulations. So Mayor, starting with the map that is the future land use map, also known as the comprehensive plan map. This is a map that visually depicts what it is the city hopes to accomplish and how land would be used consistent with the city's vision and the city's goals and policies. So this is a map that's used to review and evaluate zoning changes and things of that nature. And it is not on your agenda for revisions this month, but we did discuss some changes with the Planning Commission that would be on your agenda for next year, since we only amend comprehensive plans once a year, and we'll be working with the Planning Commission on bringing some revisions to the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan next year. But we wanted to show you the couple of the changes and highlight them to provide some context, and then go to the zoning map. So on the comprehensive plan or future land use map, we've identified by number a couple of the changes. You'll see two large areas and a smaller area in the lower left-hand corner that are in blue, that are numbered 1 and 2. Those are properties that the city has recently acquired, and both of them are for public uses and public projects. And the law provides for the city to, in the case of parcel number 1, acquire land and have it annexed into the city, even though it is not contiguous to the main city boundaries, for public purposes. And so areas 1 and 2 would be designated for public use, since that's why the city acquired them. And in a moment, you'll see that they would be zoned for public use on the official zoning map. So not significant changes, but something that's required by law. The things that we wanted to highlight for you, and we'll come back after the first of the year and talk more about, have to do with areas 3, 4, and 5 on the map. And the area 3 is the area also known as the Martin Airfield, which is on the far left of the map, and it's a bright orange color. Yes.
I'm sorry, but they do not have the land use map.
Oh, they don't. Okay. Okay.
It was not made available to them.
Okay.
I didn't realize you wanted to talk about that.
Okay. Well, nope. Well, then why don't you
But I think they're all familiar enough with the areas that we can point to them and you can still do your presentation. I just just wanted to be clear that we're looking at the zoning map.
Okay, I was looking at the future land use map and having a heck of a discussion with myself. My apologies. Mayor, it's the area just, where Martin Airfield is, to the west of the city. Imagine that green, bright orange. What we have talked with the Planning Commission about, and we'll bring back to you next year, is a proposal to change that from light industrial, which is how is designated on the county comprehensive plan, even though the area arguably is not suitable for industrial development, to a master plan development designation. And the rationale for that is that it is difficult to know what the future development plans for that area might be. The city has raised a lot of questions with the county about the suitability of that area. Nevertheless, for development, there's a new property owner that may have plans. And so designating that area as suitable for a master plan development would still provide for a public process and public input, but would and provide that there be an environmental review and analysis to make sure any development is appropriate. But it avoids having to guess what the appropriate zoning might be, such as commercial or industrial or residential. So it really kind of keeps the city's options open, and it allows the city time to meet with the new owner of the property as his plans evolve. So that was our thinking for that area. The area that you'll remember that is just across the highway from the high school, which the city had proposed to the county, was highly suitable for commercial development. We have on that map right now as a potential urban growth expansion area, which would indicate to the county and others that the city still sees that area as being highly suitable for development. That's the area served by the Robert Gordon well, and areas that where urban services exist or reasonably can be provided is areas that should be in the city's urban growth area. So it indicates that the city is not giving up on that matter, and identifies the area just to the east of it as an area that needs to continue to be studied and evaluated. So that is what you have to look forward to this coming year. But that sets the stage then to talk about the map that you do have in front of you, which is the zoning map. And
actually, Greg, now we have the land use map in front of you.
You're messing with me.
I emailed it to Lisa just in the nick of time for you to switch topics.
Okay, so before you switch then, well, there it is. It's still there? Yep. So Mayor, just quickly to review, you'll see the areas 1 and 2 in the blue. You'll see the bright orange around the airfield saying, let's keep our options open. And you'll see the area over in the lower right-hand corner as the potential expansion area, the indication to the county and the property owners that the area that has freeway access, that is served by a new award-winning well, that has sewer access, is an area that should be a part of the city's urban growth area. Apparently now it's going to be a matter of when that happens, but it puts the city's position is clear, and it provides an opportunity to continue to meet with the property owners in that UGA study area number 5, and to discuss with them the suitability. It might be appropriate, Mayor, for some of those areas to be removed, some of the larger lot areas that are already served by private wells. Maybe they don't need access to city water in the future, and maybe they would be appropriate to be dropped out, but that's what a study area is all about, is to meet with property owners and continue discussions. So this is the map that you'll see in the future. Now, John, let's look at the other map. Or Carolyn?
Or Lisa.
Or Lisa?
She's working on it.
Okay. I, by the way, think the city attorney's background is very, very cool, and I'm envious of that. Just saying.
Some interesting backgrounds.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So Mayor and Council, this is the official zoning map, and it has 3 changes highlighted. It has the areas in the blue over on the left that I mentioned, the new city property. Since it's annexed into the city, it should be zoned. It would be zoned for public uses, so the zoning would match the use. The other thing that we did, and this is something that has kind of a lot of meaning to planners and to planning nerds, but the city in the past had designated a number of properties, planned unit developments, and had approved them under a code that was an alternative to the city's subdivision regulations. Since we've now updated the city codes, we don't need an alternative to the subdivision code because your subdivision code is up to date. And so that there would be no confusion about the future zoning, we've now changed the zoning map so that plan unit development designation goes away. And if those underlying developments, for whatever reason, are terminated, then the land would be zoned and developed to be consistent with the neighboring properties. So that's something that John and the Planning Commission and I would all know and smile and understand. And some of you might be saying, what in the heck is he talking about? But it's a technical correction that will make it easier to administer the zoning map in the future. So those are the only changes that we are proposing to the zoning this year. And I'll pause here to see if you have any questions before I go to the regulations. Then let's go to the regulations.
Did you want to actually see the exhibits?
I don't know that we need to. If the council would like, we can certainly put it up. But Mayor, you and the council will have time to look through the regulations. We've highlighted the changes. I'm going to just briefly describe them for you. So as you look through, you may see these. And if you have questions tonight or at your next meeting, we can certainly respond in more detail. But briefly stated, we've added some provisions to the regulations that spell out the process for executing a development agreement, which is a form of a contract that the state allows cities to enter into with developers, that spells out specifically what developers are obligated to do and when to do it. That's a very useful tool, especially when you have projects that maybe get implemented over a number of years. So we've added provisions now to make it clear how development agreements would be approved. We've updated some of the definitions. There you'll see right there, you see how it's highlighted, that in blue, it indicates that's an addition. We've added a number of definitions and deleted some definitions just to make sure things are up to date. One of perhaps the significant changes in the regulations has to do with the state of Washington licensing and authorizing farmers to produce hemp for commercial purposes. And a year ago, the state licensed a facility in the city, and we had an opportunity to talk with the police chief about some of the challenges and issues that commercial hemp growing operation presented. Hemp, as you may know, shares a number of similarities with marijuana, not only in smell but appearance. And some people get excited by the sight of a field of hemp, thinking that it might be marijuana, and that presents security issues and trespassing issues. And also, as I said, it can produce odors and smells that may be offensive to some neighboring property owners. And unfortunately, the state has taken the position that they license the growing, but they don't include it in their process any verification that the applicant is complying with local zoning regulations. And so we had a discussion with the City Planning Commission about, is any type of commercial agricultural activities appropriate within a city limits, and especially is the growing of hemp appropriate in the city, and if so, is it appropriate in certain zones or not others? And the recommendation of the Planning Commission is that hemp not be permitted in any zoning district in the city, that if farmer wants to grow hemp for commercial purposes outdoors, that should occur in the rural portion of the county, but not in the residential areas of the city. So that is a change and a specific recommendation of the Planning Commission. We have also updated some of the standards by which addresses are assigned within the city. We've made it clear that a special use permit is required for vacation rentals and bed and breakfast inns. The regulations already had some standards for the permitting of them, but we've made it clear that a special use permit is required so that if there ever is any problem or issue, the city has a way of enforcing compliance. The Planning Commission has recommended some modifications to the standards for mobile home parks to make sure that the mobile home parks are developed and maintained to a higher standard and make sure their appearance is maintained. And the Planning Commission spent quite a bit of time talking about RV parks and recognizing that RV parks are evolving somewhat in their use, and not only are they places for vacationers to stop on a short-term basis, but increasingly consistent with state law, people are looking to RVs as being a housing opportunity or option for some, much, or most of the year. And so in recognition of that, the Planning Commission has recommended a number of standards to make sure that there are appropriate setbacks, buffers, landscaping, and requirements to make sure that RV parks are well maintained and their appearance is maintained over the course of the year. And finally, the Planning Commission reviewed the standards for accessory dwelling units and has recommended to use some revisions that would allow larger accessory buildings on larger lots. The city has, in some areas, lots that are ½ acre, ¾ acre, an acre or more. And the Planning Commission has recommended in those cases that it would be appropriate to have perhaps a larger garage or a larger shop on those larger lots while maintaining the standards for smaller and more appropriately sized accessory dwelling units on the smaller lots within the city. So those are the different changes you'll see highlighted throughout the document. And then in addition to that, there's just some editorial changes, clarification of language, and just little tiny things that kind of pop up during the course of the year in administering the regulations. So Mayor and Council, if you have any specific questions, I can certainly respond to them now. Otherwise, if you have any questions at your next meeting, we'd be happy to respond in more detail. But I'll pause here to see if you have any questions about the kind of largely housekeeping measures that you have before you.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Dorn?
Yeah, Lauren here, I raised my hand. Greg, I hate to bring this up, but what's the timeline, if you could remind me, for the next comprehensive plan?
The requirement is about 2026, 2027, somewhere in there, John, isn't it?
It's 2026 is when we're scheduled to have a overhaul of the comp plan again. Periodically we go in and we'll do a minor amendments to it, and it's been a couple of years, and there are a few items that we've been asked to look at. One of them is more to look at our goals and policies on affordable housing. So we'll be taking a look at that next year. But also we're hoping to have continue discussions with Walla Walla and have them with the county regarding how we move forward on the buildable lands analysis, for, you know, having good quality discussions about expansion of our urban growth areas for
So we have a,
affordable housing.
so we have a 6-7 year span to, as we, to communicate that is what the timeline's looking at.
Well, it's really less than that, because you have a year of processing applications. So if you go back, the county will open up their application process in 2025. But before that, I'm really hopeful that the county will update the countywide planning policies that date back to 1993. And that document is what guides the jurisdictions on how we do our analysis. And so those discussions really, you know, at least we need to be having earnest discussions with the county and the city of Walla Walla about moving forward on those updates in this coming year. And then that's a public process that we'll have to work through. So, you know, that could take 6 months to probably a year with the way the county operates their docketing system. So, you know, we don't have a lot of time. No, I mean, it seems like we do, but it's going to go by really quickly.
Oh, thanks, John, and thanks, Greg.
So Mayor, there's one other ordinance that you have before you. The city periodically needs to update the International Building Code and related codes that it administers. It's an international code. There's a state building code council that reviews and make recommendations to the cities on what version of the code they should adopt and when they should adopt it. And we are updating the code right now in other areas, but with respect to the international code, it still contains the provisions relevant to the 2015 international code. And just after the first of the year, on or about February 1st, is when the city would need to adopt and implement the 2018 international codes. So we thought, instead of waiting a couple of months and incurring the cost of having a separate public notice and a separate public hearing and separate publication, that we would bring at the same time an ordinance that will update the international building codes at the appropriate time. But we put a provision in there that says it won't go into effect until February 1st. So you would adopt it, we'd be all ready to go, we would have saved time, we would have saved the city money, but then we wait until the effective date for it to go into place. So this was just some forward thinking and a way of saving the city time and money. And so it will be on your agenda also at the coming meeting, but it's something that is really mandated by the state, and it's important that the city stay current in its regulations, particularly as it relates to building code and measures to protect the public health and safety. So you'll have two ordinances before you, one to amend the Unified Development Code, and to update the official zoning map, and then a second ordinance which will adopt the international codes but delays the effective date until the appropriate time in 2021. And then we will reconvene with the Planning Commission, work on the fine tuning those map changes that I described to you when the map was not in front of you. And as John indicated, work on some goals and policy changes that hopefully will set the stage and inspire the county to engage with the city of College Place and the city of Walla Walla in updating the countywide planning policies so that we all have some more effective tools to deal with things like making sure that there is an adequate supply of land for housing in a county that is experiencing a severe shortage of affordable housing, and to make sure that the cities have access to adequate land for commercial development, since that development it needs to go hand in hand with future residential growth and development, and to enable the city to maintain city services. But that's coming up on your agenda for next year. And like I say, if you have any questions about either of the ordinances, we can certainly respond to them next week or next meeting.
And then I would just also add some housekeeping items. Of course, we worked with the Planning Commission throughout the year, a meeting initially in person, and then of course through Zoom, so the meetings are available and recorded. But we also did hold a public hearing on October 6th, or excuse me, on when did we hold our public hearing? On October 20th. I advertised for the hearing on the 6th and the 13th. We issued an environmental determination, and we didn't receive any public comments on any of the changes, either in writing or through our public hearing process, electronic public hearing process. So those are the housekeeping items that I'm sure you all love to hear, but I need to get on record. So
I have a general question, and in looking at the zoning map, and affordable housing is a big thing for me, and I couldn't help but notice how much is zoned single family. Has there been any discussion about expanding the multifamily zoning, and not necessarily large apartments, but anything from 2 to 10 units, some of the smaller size multifamily?
Well, I think so. In all of the single family zone, the yellow that you see, we do allow up to 2 units, so duplexes. All of that single family zoning also allows the accessory dwelling units. But I think as we have a deeper discussion with the Planning Commission next year about the affordable housing issue, we'll be wrapping up the study that the jurisdictions are working on, and we'll have some data to get out there to the Planning Commission. But I think part of the discussion should be taking a look at what Walla Walla has done in their single family zone, and they are I'm not sure exactly how high of a density you can go, but I want to say it's up to like a 6-plex in their single family zones. So so that could be something that we look at and see how, Walla Walla's had that zoning for a couple of years now, and so that would be interesting to look at and see if that's an option for the city of College Place.
Great, good, thank you. So does anyone else have any questions? Okay, doesn't look like it. Thank you very much, Greg. We appreciated it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mayor. I don't have a barking dog in the background to disrupt the proceedings, but thankfully you can't smell the wonderful garlic that's coming from the lasagna in the oven. So I am going to excuse myself, Mayor, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you.
Greg.
You bet. Thank you.
Mike, I'm going to go back a little bit to your presentation. Can you tell us a little bit more about this EPA award? And what about the project that they particularly like?
Well, but basically the EPA award recognizes just top projects that basically accomplish efficiency goals, such as combining disparate water systems, and then innovation and funding. And as you may recall, this project, it was a multi-layered cake of financial options between the DWSRF grant loans from the state, Christ Community Fellowship put in some money, we did, and then multiple legislative appropriations. So, and then plus, we made that water system go away. Now they're customers of the city. So in general, that's very innovative work. So
That's great. Great job again. Once again, everybody that worked on that project. Now we got to find another way to put a little plaque on, calling it an award-winning Robert Gordon Well.
Yeah.
I liked that title that Greg used. Okay, so then are there any other questions or comments regarding the presentations? All right, then let's move on. The next item on the agenda is public hearings. However, we do not have any public hearings tonight. So we're going to move along to the action items. First one is to authorize administration to execute amendment number 2 to the comprehensive water system plan update. And I believe Mr. Hartwig's going to give a presentation.
Yeah, the city was informed that in 2018, the federal government issued a ruling saying that all water systems between 3,300 and 49,000 have to complete a risk and a resiliency assessment, and then include that with your emergency response plan. This is unfunded, and it seemed logical to just include that with the water system plan update that is going on by RH2. So because this is a requirement that needs to be completed by mid-year next year, we wanted to bring this to you and ask for your approval to execute amendment number 2 to the comprehensive water system plan. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hartwig. Okay, we're going to go through the council to see if any questions or comments for Mr. Hartwig. And we will start with Mr. Cleveland.
No questions at this time.
Okay, Mr. Peterson,
No questions at this time.
Ms. Sherman,
Oh, my name comes up quick this time. I don't have any comments or questions. Thanks.
okay, and Mr. Trope.
A quick question, Paul. It sounded like, I thought I heard you say this is unbudgeted. On the agenda item, it says it is on the budget.
It's budgeted, but it's not funded. It's an unfunded mandate by the federal government.
Okay, so we've got to take this, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those wonderful unfunded mandates. All right, so if there's no further questions or comments, is there a motion?
Councilmember Trope, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the administration to execute amendment 2 of the comprehensive water system plan update with RH2 in the amount of $52,900.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second from Peterson.
Great, thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the vote is unanimous. The ayes have it and the motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartwig. Next item is the heart monitor purchase, and Mr. Chief Winter, not Mr. Chief Winter, will share that.
David works. I try not to be too stuck on titles. Before you is a request for the purchase of 2 heart monitors. In 2001, Zoll came out with the M series heart monitor and automatic defibrillator machine that also takes your blood pressure, measures your pulse, measures your temperature, all those good things. We were notified by the company that starting January, they would no longer service the M series since it is 20 years old. We did buy it used to begin with when we first started the ambulance program back in November of 2019. Normally these are used on every CPR call. They're used on chest pain calls. We use them all the time. It was identified in our risk assessment during the first start of the year when COVID first started, that performing CPR on a patient really is our largest risk for contracting COVID. And so through the generosity of grant applications and Mike allowing me to apply for grants, we have applied not only for the CARES grant for the heart compression machine that we got approved at the last council meeting, but also are looking very favorable to get a 75% match for the replacement of 2 of these heart monitors through the public assistance grant. And so we are putting this purchase before you.
Great. All right, let's go through the council for questions, starting with Mr. Cleveland.
No questions, but I'm glad that we're looking to keep our equipment updated and our first responders well equipped.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Miss Sherman.
No question.
You're up again. Okay, and Mr. Trope.
No questions.
All right, if there's no further questions or comments, is there, oh, Councilmember Cleveland?
I was just going to motion.
Okay. Go
I'd like
ahead.
to motion. I'd like to motion to approve the purchase of 2 heart monitors to assist the fire department with COVID responses.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Any other discussions, questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the vote is unanimous. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the resolution for support of FEMA hazard mitigation grant, and Mr. Rizzatello will share that with us.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This grant opportunity is for the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Program. A bunch of money went into this from the Federal CARES Act, and projects that are listed in a county hazard mitigation plan are eligible for funding and really sit in a good position to get funding. So in this case, it's to do a seismic upgrade and some outfall work on our water tower. The water tower dates to late 1940s. In our hazard mitigation plan going back from 2004, this was listed as one of the projects to do, and it hasn't been done yet. In the capital facility plan, we had some money earmarked to do some water tower renovation work in a couple of years. This would jumpstart that. So basically, what we are asking for is a little over $1.1 million from FEMA. The state would kick in just shy of $185,000, and then $185,000 would come from local water funds, which, as I said, if you look at a capital facility plan, we had more than that scheduled for a couple of years down the line. So this would just seismically upgrade that water tower because it's old, and back then they didn't really do that. And then size the outfall appropriately, because right now that's not sized appropriately. So that's what's before you tonight. Resolution of support doesn't attach us to really executing as of yet. It's just, you know, typical resolution of support.
Okay, thank you. Let's go for questions or comments. Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman.
My only question is, it's not going to be changing like necessarily the look, just the safety.
Well, I mean, it depends what the engineers say. That what I could see happening is additional cross bracing between the legs. because there isn't really a ton of that. So I could see that. I know that was listed as some of the stuff RH2 noticed on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Trope?
No questions.
All right. There's no further questions or comments. Can we have a motion, Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I'd move to adopt resolution number 20-046, which authorizes the city agent for the FEMA Hazards Flood Mitigation Grant Program designating applicant agent.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Councilmember Trope, second.
It is resolution 20045, please.
I'm sorry, what? That's a misprint?
No, you need to restate your motion.
Did I say 4-5? Did I say?
You
I'm
said
lost.
6.
Yeah, you said 46, and in the document it's just 20-045.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Let me start over. How's that? We good with that?
Good.
Absolutely.
Move to adopt resolution number 20-045, which supports grant application to FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program for seismic retrofit work, designating applicant agent.
Councilmember Trope, second.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further additional comments or questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, Mike. So next item, oh, I kind of lost my place. The Lodging Tax Advisory Commission finding recommendations, and oh, that's going to be presented by Mr. Trope and Ms. Neisel.
Nope, we're actually at the second FEMA. There's 2 FEMA hazard.
Yeah.
Okay, my apologies.
I know you're excited to have me present, Norma.
It happens so rarely. I want to just get to it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mayor. I sent us down this course, so I apologize.
Oh, Lauren.
We're just so excited.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the resolution of support for the FEMA Hazard Flood Mitigation Grant.
Yeah. So this is a bucket of flood grant money that FEMA is giving out as well from the Federal CARES Act. General concept here is to try to get some funding from them to provide more of the money to separate the Lions Park pond from the creek. We already have RCO money, but my hope is that potentially we could sub in the federal money for our local match and then use the local match to do some of the stuff that's like unfunded. Because right now the one project in Lions Park that didn't get funded by RCO is like where the softball area is. So if we get this will provide more breathing room to deal with some of the unfunded stuff. So it's just a resolution of support.
Okay, great. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm very excited of what Lions Park's going to look like maybe by 10 years.
Hopefully not 10.
Yeah.
5 years, 4?
Oh, it'll be sooner than that. I mean, the plan is we're getting all money together this year, and we're doing engineering this year, and I would hope construction would go later this year, not this year, later 2021 into 2022. So it'll happen like very soon.
See, that really is exciting. All right, let's go for questions or comments, and we'll start with Mr. Cleveland.
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions.
and Mr. Trope.
Just like to echo your comment about full support for this, and really grateful that you found different ways to bring funding sources to bear on this. This is going to be a great project for the city.
You're here. All right, if there's no further questions or comments, actually, no, do we have a motion? And Mr. Trope?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 20-046, which authorizes city agent for the FEMA Hazard Flood Mitigation Grant Program designating applicant agent.
All second.
Great. We have a
Councilmember
first and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. It's unanimous and the motion is passed. Looking forward to that one. Okay, now is the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission finding recommendations. And Mr. Trope, are you going to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I'll do it. And Lisa, if I screw it up, please correct me. So the commission met this past week to look at options for funding. And in this case, we considered 3 requests. One from an out-of-state company called C-Source to do some push advertisement. Another from Fort Walla Walla Museum, which is an annual requirement or annual request to support them. And then finally was our endeavor to jazz up our Christmas festival with this Light Up the Avenue. So the C-Source was asking for $6,000 and we turned that one down unanimously. The idea being that where we are right now with COVID and all these things, it really wasn't necessary to go out and solicit a bunch of people to come to town and drive our numbers up. So we set that aside. I think that's something that could be considered in the future. Fort Walla Walla was a little bit more dire. Typically they get about $2,000 a year, but you can imagine with COVID, their attendance is way down. They've taken pretty aggressive action to reduce their cost level, but they're going to need help from us and Walla Walla to keep that place alive. And I think that's in our best interest. So in this case, they asked for $3,500 and we're recommending council approve that. And then finally, another $10,000 in this case for the hardware infrastructure, if you will, to build this Light Up the Avenue project or initiative that the staff has come up with that we're all in great support of. This is going to allow us to spend some time building up inventory of decorations and different things like that so that when we come out of COVID, we can also allocate some monies for marketing, no earlier than next year. There won't be marketing money spent this year. So what we're really asking for is to approve these 2 funding or recommending that we approve funding Fort Walla Museum and City of College Place Light Up the Avenue.
Okay, great. All right, let's go for questions. Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman.
No questions, but those seem like great projects for us to be part of. Thank you.
That's a relief. No questions here either.
I was gonna say, Mr. Trope, you have any questions for yourself?
No, that was fun.
My 2 cents, I think though they're both wonderful and appropriate. I'm just as excited to see Light Up the Avenue as I am seeing Lions Park. I think our citizens will appreciate that. Okay, if there's no further questions, is there a motion? Ms. Sherman?
Oops, I'm looking at the budget. I will make a motion to approve funding of lodging tax dollars in Fund 130 as recommended and have the finance director include such funding in the budget.
Great. Is there a second?
Peterson, second.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, great. The ayes have it. It's unanimous and the motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. Trope. And please thank your team.
Thank you.
All right, the last action item is resolution of support for the City of Walla Walla State Route 125 and Myra Road intersection. Mr. Rizzatello is going to share that.
Thank you. So this item, first of all, keep in mind Myra Road and State Route 125, that intersection is controlled by City of Walla Walla. It abuts the City of College Place, We're just to the west of the right of way for Myra, but that's their intersection with WASDOT. They are going to lobby to the state legislature and other parties to try to get some money to fix up that intersection. They've done this a couple years prior, back around like 2018. They approached us in a similar manner, and there was an email went back and forth, basically where they agreed to, if they design that they'd have the left turn lane going in a commercial drive. I noticed that when they came up with the schematic here, they did not have that drawing in. So they were asking for a resolution of support, and I immediately called and emailed Nabil and Nabil, city manager, and Kai Beatley, the public works director, and I informed them that my recommendation as city council would be, we can issue a resolution of support, but it's contingent on the fact that we need that left turn lane into commercial drive, because right now there's 2 projects I've actually been working on with commercial drive where there's options on some properties over there by the private sector. I can't really get too deep into it, but one of the stumbling blocks where they're refusing to commit is that they need that left turn lane to have the full amount of traffic going in and out of commercial drive. I've been told by City of Walla Walla, and then through conversations with WASDOT, that with the inclusion of this roundabout, it basically sequences traffic in such a way where that left turn lane is possible. And they would like to include logos of like us, Walla Walla County, others in their legislative advertising document for this project, which in general, I think that's okay, but it has to be done, at least in my opinion, with the fact that that left turn lane in a commercial drive is essential. We need it, and they need to get that in place if this project comes to fruition.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Let's go for questions. Mr. Cleveland?
No questions. I just appreciate how you've managed to find an avenue of support for a much beneficial change to the roadway there. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I'd echo that comment. Mike, one quick question, kind of off subject. Is the roundabout on 9th and Military still in the hopper?
Yeah, so the roundabout at basically 9th and Dale in the Dale's Military Way, they plan on doing that next spring and summer. So that's happening like immediately, which from a traffic circulation standpoint, when they're building it, that's going to cause all sorts of issues. So yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Sherman?
Yeah, I have a question. Mike, what about a left turn off of commercial?
In my communications with them, I'm advocating for both. And keep in mind with that left turn lane off of commercial, a lot of that, the commercial drive right away stuff is actually within like city limits. So we would have the right to essentially say what is or isn't in a lot of it. The main issue is that right now they have a concrete barrier in the middle of Myra Road. So if you have that left turn lane, that barrier is going to go away, and that becomes basically a moot point where I believe from both sides you could have turning from every side. So my immediate concern, given the fact that commercial drive is within the city lexicon, is Myra Road, just because that left turn lane has been a hard fought subject. So.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Trope?
No questions.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't see, did you already put verbiage with your recommendations, or do we need to put some type of verbiage when we're making our resolution of support?
The resolution of support, it's in the title, and it's in the resolution that's set out before you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that. Okay. If there's no other questions or comments, do we have a motion? Mr. Trope? Or were you scratching your ear?
No, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 20-047, supporting the city of Walla Walla and their pursuit of grant funding for the reconfiguration of State Road 125 and Myra Road intersection, contingent upon installation of a left turn lane from northbound Myra Road onto westbound Commercial Drive.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
I'll second, Councilmember Cleveland.
Great, thank you. If there's no other discussion, Ms. Sherman?
I just want to say I had emailed Mike over the weekend asking about this because one of my concerns just from some historical situations like this was that it get on their plans and then somehow it disappears in a change order. So I think that Mike was working on that to just make sure that we basically will still not be in support if they remove it at a later date off of original plans.
Oh, good point. And good historical knowledge there.
It's been fun.
Okay, so let's give it a vote. If there's no other questions or comments, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. It's unanimous. The motion is passed. Thank you, Mike. Okay, next on the agenda are administrative reports, and we have 6 of them tonight. Mr. Rickard will present the National Flood Insurance Program Ordinance update first.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll try to be brief on this. So we've been participating in some form or another with an NFIP program with ecology since 1975. So not very long. That's only 45 years. Lisa, okay, if you would skip to page 5, slide 6, Lisa. So what this presentation was provided by the Department of Ecology when they did their community assistance visit back in May. So I'm not going to go through every slide because it's I don't know all the details, but I'll hit some of the highlights. So what this program does and why we participate in it is that it allows us as homeowners to buy insurance through the federal government and be insured in the case of a flooding event. So we have 16 policies presently, totals about $4 million worth of insured properties. We over the last, I think over that entire 45 years, we've only had one paid loss, and it didn't amount to very much. It was just a little over $4,000. So if we could go to the next slide, slide 7. Actually, I'm going to skip over that one and go to slide 8. So you can see the city of College Place where most of the policies are held. Pretty much everywhere within the city limits boundaries, we're in a zone C, which is an area of minimal or no flooding. You do see some scattered, like there's a couple of A's, which would be 100-year floodplains. But we've actually had those maps amended. That happened in around 2001, I believe. So what happened was the FEMA came in and remapped some of our areas, and they issued these, they call them LOMAs, letters of map amendments. And unfortunately, because we ended up shortly after that with Hurricane Katrina a few years later, they weren't actually able to complete the actual amendments to the maps. So because they lost a bunch of funding for the map amendments. So we've been operating off of these letters, which I had in my possessions, but anybody that was trying to get insurance wasn't able to locate those. So last year I was actually able to get FEMA to post those letters on their website. They normally catalog all that stuff, but for some reason ours were not. So that in and of itself was an act of God. But so I have those on their website now, so that the lending institutions can reference those and not require somebody to get insurance if they don't want it. But if we could go to slide 16 next. Actually, yeah, go ahead and go to slide 16. So this was one of the areas. You see that there's about 900 feet that was taken out of floodplain on Garrison Creek. It was removed. Then we have another area along where Commercial Drive was. There was a Zone A along in that area that was revised to Zone C. And then there was also, where is it in this thing? There was one in the Garrison Villages. Sorry, I'm not able to locate it, but anyhow, those were amended as well. So what the revisions to this ordinance, the changes over the years that they're recommending, it's primarily they've added a lot of definitions. They've also added a section for how to deal with variances. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them to the best of my abilities.
All right, do we have any questions? And we'll start with Mr. Cleveland. Questions or comments? No? Mr. Peterson?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
Okay, and Mr. Trope?
No questions.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to Chief Winter, present the ambulance utility reintroduction.
So back in September of 2018, the city had contracted with FCS Group to do a study on what it would look like to start up an ambulance utility here in College Place. At the same time, City of Walla Walla was looking to do that for their community. Currently, the ambulance service is funded through some grants, the ground emergency transport reimbursement for Medicaid, through the EMS levy, and through fees that we get for the service. And then the remainder of that is coming out of the general fund. When we did this study back in 2018, 32% of our run volume was out of nursing homes. And what we tried to do in the study, and you can see the updated form there, was we looked at what percentage is done by certain type of occupancy, and then divided that by how many users or beds there are in that occupancy group to come up with the fee. In 2019, 45% of what we were doing was out of nursing homes. And that, when I did this report here a week and a half ago, we were at 43% of what we were doing is coming out of nursing homes. I redid the numbers today. We are now at 45% of our workload is coming out of nursing homes. Our call volume currently, with COVID and everything up, we are at about 20 runs ahead of this time last year, but we are up 25% in our transports, which is a huge jump for us when we are primarily a volunteer organization with one paid person on at a time in the evening and weekend hours. That is a huge workload. And COVID is causing us about 2 hours for every COVID patient we take into the hospital because of the decontaminating of the vehicle and our personnel when we get back, which includes putting a decontamination fogging machine in the vehicle, All of our personnel have to shower every call, which means all their clothes have to be laundered, all the protective gear that we have to wear, all those types of things are really creating a drain. So some of you weren't on council back then. And so this is just kind of an update of that report to just try and see what the flavor of what the city wants us to do as far as continuing funding the ambulance service that we provide. Do you want it to continue to come out of current expense? Do you want to introduce an ambulance utility? I know that the city of Walla Walla is relooking at theirs as well. And the report I got from them today is that they are looking to get funding out of their current utility fees to help offset some of their costs, and that by 2023, they will have an ambulance utility in place for them to help with their staffing shortfalls that they have. Also, some of what we're looking at here is there is some concern in the city that there are 4 more nursing care facilities looking to build in College Place. And how do we offset that workload to our community and offset that cost that our current citizens are picking up? I don't mind paying my fair share for my neighbors. I don't know if I mind paying, I know I mind paying for a for-profit business's share. If you looked at your current taxes of what you pay for the EMS levy at 50 cents per thousand on a $200,000 house, you know, that's going to be, what is that, $100, $200? Currently Regency at the park last year paid $3,500, and yet they are part of that 45% of what we do. So it isn't necessarily equitable depending on workload and depending on that. And so Mike and I just thought we should talk about this again and see what the flavor of the council is. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
And before you get to that, I just wanted to add something too. If you recall, for those on council at the time when this was discussed, reason this was delayed was because there was some thought that maybe that regional fire authority thing would work out. But as you all saw earlier in the year, I think we saw where that pretty much went. So with this, we still have the problem that we're a growing city and then there's more calls. And I would echo Chief Winger's concern. I am aware of 4 other long-term nursing home facilities looking at building here. And that's going to have a chilling effect on our ability to respond. And the fact that your property tax alone from those, that doesn't near cover the demand. And it's just weighing that, because if we're getting more of those here, that's going to cause a drain on service levels. And this you could look at as an attempt to essentially equalize it a bit toward those who utilize the service a lot more.
Right. Thank you both. So we'll go for questions. Mr. Cleveland.
I'm not entirely sure I have any questions at this time. I'm open to the idea of kind of looking at the pros and cons of establishing an ambulance utility. I've been hearing a lot of good reasons so far. What would be some of the cons to establishing the utility that we're aware of?
Sure. The biggest con is people on a fixed income have to pay a share. You know, I know that in talking with the people I know that are on Medicare, they got a $20 a month pay raise, if we would call it pay, for next year. And if we were to hire 4 more people, we're looking to take $6.29 a month from them, because there's not a way to, I'm sure there's a way, but in the methodology that FCS came up with, there isn't a way to not charge every occupancy. And so right now, a senior could have an exemption. With an ambulance utility, they couldn't.
Why is it that they couldn't have some kind of exemption? Is there laws that prevent that, or some sort of logistical roadblock?
And maybe Mike could answer that. I'm just going off of what the study that I have, and they thought everybody should pay a fair share.
Well, it's basically we could recalibrate the model for the most recent like call volumes and things like that, but it was basically based on call volumes, based on single family residences, university, long-term care facility, commercial, and so on and so forth. So fact of the family, single family still had to pay something. I believe under what they originally were calibrating at the time, it was like around 4 or 5 a month, if memory serves me correct. And then with nursing homes, it was basically per bed at a higher value, naturally, because that's where the call volumes are originating from. So it was basically based as like, because again, as a utility, it's a lot like our other utilities, where when you calibrate that cost, it's with your water and your wastewater, it's based on use, what you're investing in capital. This is a similar concept, except instead of like gallons per minute, it's basically your ambulance runs.
Could we do something clever like, we have exemptions or kind of, what's the term I'm looking for, but some sort of hardship, breaks on some utilities. Could we increase those that folks that are on a fixed income, they couldn't directly get a tax break for an ambulance utility, but we could increase the size of kind of a tax break for another utility. So if they're like, man, I can't pay for this, like this is crushing me, we can say, well, to help you out with that, we kind of made this a little bit easier for you.
We would have to research that. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd be curious.
The tough part is that demographics is probably the higher user. The elderly use our service more than 18-year-olds.
Okay, Mr. Peterson.
Oh, a couple things. I would not want to put this through based on what we think might happen in the future as far as nursing homes. We'd have to be really sure that that's going to happen. I find that argument a little thin, but if they're going to come and we know that, we can probably pass the bridge. The other thing I'm thinking, two other things: can these funds be used for capital expenditures, or are they operations, or does it matter?
Anything within the ambulance service. So basically structures for an ambulance, ambulances themselves, anything to provide that service.
And I guess my last thought real quickly is I wouldn't want to get too far out in front. It'd be nice to know, and I know you discussed that as far as what Walla Walla is doing. It'd be nice, maybe an update on how firm that is across Myra for us. Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Sherman?
I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Trope?
Just one comment. I think this is a viable funding model for an ambulance utility. I do recognize there's some issues with that. I think it would be interesting to see some other funding models that are out there for comparable size cities. So just some, as a point of comparison, there's always going to be somebody's ox who's going to get gored, who's, not going to be comfortable with the fee structure, but it'd be nice to be able to have a comparison. This is a little difficult. I'm with the other guys on their comments.
Okay.
So I'd like to see an alternative, I think, just for the sake of comparison, Mike. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So I heard, and I don't know how true it is, but I heard that nursing homes have a policy to call for an ambulance for things that they don't want their employees having to deal with or put them in any type of liability. A fall, anything like that. Is that correct? Do they do that?
So that probably is correct of any organization. in our community that they're going to pass on liability as much as they can to anyone and anyone that they can. Nursing homes certainly do that. We go and someone falls and we go and check and make sure that they don't need to go to the hospital. And we, yeah. Yeah. People do abuse the system.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. And then, Mike, this might be more a question for you. So does our affordability, let's put it that way, for-profit nursing home, is that what's attracting them to our community? Is that why people are looking at us or businesses are looking at moving here instead of one of the surrounding cities?
I mean, I think it's based on your population, and I do think it does have an element of based on affordability as well. I mean, Walla Walla area is a very attractive area to come to, and then relative to other areas where they maybe have like a regional fire authority that has a fire service charge, or other areas like in the Tri-Cities where you do have an ambulance utility out that way. When you figure out your business models, yeah, it's cheaper to do business if you're in that location out here. So I do think that is why.
Okay. And then lastly, regarding the question about the property tax increase, the low income or the ones on fixed incomes, they get discounts on their regular property tax, correct? Waivers, or whatever it's called?
Correct.
That's correct? Yeah. Okay, so adding this ambulance utility tax, they may already not be paying much, and it wouldn't be a great burden. I mean, I know every more expense is always a more expense, but they already have a pretty helpful reduction in their property taxes.
So on a $100,000 house, the EMS levy, which collects 50 cents per thousand on you, the person on a $100,000 house is paying $5 a year.
Okay.
So it's all only, usually the reduction is only on voter approved levies and taxes and things like that.
Okay, great, that's helpful. Well, thank you very much. I would like to see more about this. I think it's, again, as Byron said, it's a viable consideration, and I would like to see for-profit businesses taking up a little bit more share of, and not using our taxpayers who live here, our property taxpayers, taking advantage of their situation, and not having to take care of their own or hiring the appropriate staff to do those things and getting freebies from our property owners. My 2 cents. I think, Ms. Caldwell, did I see your hand up?
Sorry about that. I can't figure out how to raise my hand. I'm just Googling, and it looks like the city of Tacoma in their most recent, their last budget, 2019, 2020, they approved a new fine for nursing facilities that call 911 when they shouldn't. I don't know much more about it, but just something to think about in the future.
That sounds like it's a model of their business. It could save them money because they don't have to hire skilled staff.
They just change the story, and we go anyways.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions or comments before we move on? All right. Thank you, Chief Winter. Let's see, we're moving on to the capital facility plan. Is that where? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Capital facility plan, Mr. Rizzatello.
Yeah. I just present these every meeting just so you're aware of it. You can read it, and then by the time you have to act on it, there's ample opportunity to ask questions, and to provide clarifications. So again, going into things as far as what's going on next year. Green is what's going on for 2021. Anything orange is what's planned in the future. You can look through the documents. You can see that Lions Park, Southwest Sewer, the well, things like that. That's all that flavor of what we're doing. And then within the booklet form, if you go on page 4 of the actual booklet itself, I added language that Councilmember Selby requested, where there was some concern by community members as far as what is the methodology of funding streets. So that's in the what is the capital facility plan in red type. So basically it's explaining that it's a list and it can be reprioritized based on what we're able to get grants for. And then it's also clearing up a misnomer about which streets are chosen for funding. I've heard this a lot even when I bike ride out in town. Like, why is it that we're resurfacing Lamperty or Meadowbrook, but then you have areas like Birch and Broadway or Cedar that are beat up? And the reason is that essentially roads that are federally classified, and you can get them classified based on traffic count, we're able to get state grants for that. So grants from Public Works Trust Fund, Transportation Improvement Board, legislative appropriation, they're all fair game. So all your main roads we can get. However, smaller streets like 8th Street, Birch, Date, Elm, Cedar, ones like that, those are local and those are ineligible for federal and state grants. You actually can get an appropriation for those because there's language on a legislative level for that. So that's the reason why we do our chip seal work. We do what we can to keep our local roads in shape, but for why we do the reconstructions of the federally classified, well, we're able to get a lot of outside money for those. So I made sure to put that in there because I know Councilmember Selby thought that was a point of concern for some of our residents. But yeah, read it, be aware of it. I'll take any questions on the projects, but I'm just trying to make sure that there's an awareness. It's $80 million, so capital facility plan over the next 6 years. And a lot of the projects you all know about. I mean, the biggest one in the future years is the wastewater treatment plant, and the biggest one next year is the Southwest Sewer, and making that go to fruition. And then working on wrapping up well number 6 at Whitman and Maple. So I mean, that's just some of the big ticket items we're dealing with.
All right. Any questions, Mr. Cleveland?
Just a little bit off topic, but you just mentioned the well on Whitman and Maple. And I was just kind of curious if you had just a very, very brief update for how that's going.
Okay, so with well number 6, I mean the actual hole has been punched. It has a casing in it. We're in the middle of doing the engineering plans for it. It took a lot longer because in the middle of this one, the State Department of Health changed their procedures for essentially permitting well houses and mechanical equipment and so forth. So this went through a much more rigorous and painful review process on the state level, which set us behind some. So they're wrapping up engineering now. I would expect we'll be able to get to construction later, like next year, but it will go heavily into 2022 because there was a delay because of some of the state requirements with well house and mechanical equipment.
Okay. And did we have, I know we'd applied a couple times for some funding for a solar array out that direction. And I just don't recall if you've done an update or if I missed something. I was just kind of curious, are we still pursuing that? Is that something that's paused, or just kind of where is that at?
It's a little bit paused at the moment. So we did put gravel down around where the new well site is going to be at. We did get a partial grant from Pacific Power Blue Sky program, but it was not the entirety of the project like we were aiming for. So what we are trying to do is regroup and work with McKinstry and go after some state funding and hopefully complete the funding package for that project.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions.
okay, and Mr. Trope.
No questions.
All right, thank you, Mike. Let's see, next you're going to discuss or present the equipment replacement plan, an update on that.
Yeah. Nothing's changed in that. So again, similar dynamic. Green is budgeted, orange is planned for, and then stuff is marked high, medium, and low based on the necessity of need. So for the next 6 years, you'll see all of that projected. So a generator at City Hall for fire department doing the leasing, and the captain truck, the marshal truck, and turnouts SCBA, which is very standard. And then from the monies we've been getting from dispatching out to all the wildland calls, a wildland truck, a used one. Police department continuing the leasing program. And then with the body cam concept that's in the IT plan, with marrying that with a taser replacement, we're able to get a cost reduction in both, because it's the same sole source provider, because many of our tasers are out of their warranty period. So we need to get that switched. And then going into public works, nothing in stormwater next year. Streets, the heavy item there is the grader, because that's from 1976. So naturally that needs to be replaced. Wastewater, we outsource that as part of the contract for services with Jacobs Group, so continuing that. And then with the water, just replacing a pickup truck within that division. So just reiterating what's been presented the last time, so you're all aware of it for when it goes to action in the coming weeks.
Okay, let's go for questions. Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions.
and Mr. Trope.
No question.
All right, thank you, Mike. And now we're going to discuss the information technology plan.
Thank you. Again, very similar concept. The only thing I would say that I deviated from in past years with this is it was divvied up primarily in the past by hardware, software, and staffing. I still have that in column form, but it's really organized by a department, because that really helps understand it more. Key things there is trying to work on the AV system and video walls for council chambers. A lot of software maintenance. We've made great strides toward really getting our stuff digitized, getting functions up online. We've been able to make quite a few strides with the CARES COVID money to make stuff that is on our list for a long time a reality. So a lot of it's software maintenance now. Computers after next year will actually be caught up finally, so that's good. Going into community development, just continuing with iWork. We should have that launched to the public, I would expect, near the new year. We're working on that, getting the community development forms up and so forth. Fire department, the radio replacement, MDTs, software update for firehouse, the maintenance agreement. Police department, just computers, paying for our share of the regional 911 server that was punted for a year. The thing we did change though, is we are out of the forfeited proceeds fund. We did delay acquisition of some camera equipment for a year, just because since there wasn't a ton of court activity this year because of COVID, some of the revenues coming in there weren't as healthy as in past years. so we just had to give it a break. I will say I'm going to try to write a grant to Wild Horse Foundation again to see if they'll pay for another 2 cameras. So that's my plan, to try to get around that impasse. But for now, at least, just keep in mind if we're on our own with the cameras, there'll be a year gap on that. And then Public Works, again, just software maintenance and computers, but we're finally to a point of like catching up on our IT stuff, which is pretty nice. So it's mainly software maintenance and doing work at council chambers and then tasers and stuff like that, but nothing out of the ordinary from what I've said at past meetings.
All right, thank you, Mike. Okay, let's go for questions. Mr. Cleveland?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Peterson?
No questions, just a comment. Thanks, Mike. There's an incredible amount of work you've put into these documents. Thanks.
Thanks.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions.
And Mr. Trope?
No question.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Mike. I think you can get a little rest now. And Mr. Carlton, you're up to discuss the 2021 preliminary budget and budget message.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This presentation was given to you at the last council meeting. This is strictly informational for you. We're still in, I would say, probably a 90% completion phase on the budget. We've made some modifications. If you can bring up, there's another sheet in there that shows the changes that were made since the last meeting. I'll just go briefly through. These are the only changes that have been made since the last presentation. We did have some adjustment in the volunteer fire stipends that weren't calculating properly in bias, so we had to update those manually. That's a significant change in the current expense. There was some changes in the one of the bonds that was paid off this year for the fire engine. That was paid off, and those were inadvertently put into the budget for next year, so that was removed. Also, due to the fact that well number 2 is delayed expenditures, we moved those funds out of 2021 and into 2022. And then that's the removal of the camera that Mike was talking about. Those are all the changes that were made to date. If you can bring up the summary page. Just wait for it to come up here. The only thing we have is we were pretty much at a break even on the current expense, the very first line. You can see now that we're at a deficit. That's because of the stipends. We still have a fair bit of work reconciling all the interfund transfers, making sure that all the capital expenditures are tied out in the transfers between the different funds. So that can have an impact on some of the accounts. So right now we're strictly at informational level, and I would say, like I said previously, we're at about 90% complete. And that's, we talked briefly about some of the significant drawdowns in the funds. You can see in the Fund 306, which is our REIT 2, that is the Lions Park. That's our portion of the amount that we've committed to the project, and that's an anticipated drawdown. The Street Improvement Fund, that we need to look into a little bit. We do have significant spending in there next year. We have Majoiners in there for $711,000. So that's having a significant impact on that fund. So we need to look at that and see if we're still in compliance with the fund balance. Another significant one is down on Fund 411. That drawdown is anticipated. That is for the Southwest Sewer Project, and part of that amount is the $500,000 we're required to fund out of our own reserves based on the USDA requirements of our funding plan. So that's just strictly anticipated, but I do believe there's significant reserves left in that account that will still be in compliance. The other one is the water, is 413 fund. That is the portion of our commitment on the wells projects, and that's an anticipated drawdown. But overall, you can see we're at a surplus in total fund numbers. So I think we're in good shape. We'll fine tune this more in the next 2 weeks, and we'll have our formal presentation ready for next council meeting. And that'll be the first, public meeting. That's all I have this go around. Any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Cleveland?
No questions, but thank you so much for all your work and trying to balance all the numbers. I'm sure it's quite a Herculean task.
Yes, Mr. Peterson.
Brian, could you pull up the change sheet real quick? I know it's late. I just wanted to, it was the doc, yeah. Are those debits and credit? Those are, I'm trying to figure out the math there.
No, yeah, we're a cash basis city, so it doesn't really do it according to debits and credits, but you can see the numbers that start with the 3-7. So the bars affected column, if it starts with a 3, that's a revenue.
Oh,
and if it starts with a 5, that's an expenditure.
Got it.
So yeah, I thought maybe I'd get that question, but
No, that's fine. No, thank you.
All right, Ms. Sherman.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Trope.
No questions.
All right. If there's no other questions or comments, and thank you, Mr. Carlton. I don't know how you keep this all straight. It's
I live it.
And that's that I'm in banking, and that's a heck of a lot of numbers. All right, so let's, next on the agenda, there's no informational reports in the package for you to read. Oh, there's one, excuse me. There's one report in the package for you to review, so please do so. All right, are there any other business for good of the order? No, all right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, first and a second. So if there's no objections, the meeting is adjourned at 8:46 p.m. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.